All right, welcome everyone. This is a meeting of community volunteers tasked with advising council on items related to Portland Water Bureau and the Bureau of Environmental Services. And under Portland City Code and state law, the Portland Utility Board is holding this meeting electronically. Board members and relevant city staff are attending remotely, electronically, or by phone, and the city has made it available for the public to listen to the audio broadcasting of this meeting. As stated, the meeting is being recorded, and the public will have an opportunity to provide comments during the public comment portion of the agenda, and can also provide written testimony to the board by emailing us at utilityboard@portlandoregon.gov. Pub believes and acts upon anti-racist principles. In our meeting spaces and interactions with Pub, while every person has the right to share their personal perspective, we stand against wrongful conduct, particularly any conduct that is targeted towards people who are made vulnerable by systemic inequity. And this means stepping up as a community when there is wrongful conduct and fostering a space of learning and growth. And putting our principles into action means speaking up and speaking out. Each person on this board is empowered to maintain the culture of the board, and we will remain focused on the impacted individual or population, condemning the conduct, not the person.
Hi, my name's Amy Archer-Masters, and I'll quickly run through the meeting guidelines. When you're speaking, please state your name before you speak and the person that you're addressing, if appropriate. The chat box is only viewable by me, so please limit to technical and logistical issues, including signing up for public comment, asking for technical assistance, or reminding us if you've been waiting to speak and haven't been called on. The raise hand function is primarily used by the board. I may lower your hand once you've begun speaking just to maintain the flow of conversation. During public comment periods, the public can raise your hand and you'll be called on when appropriate. If you're connecting by phone, you may need to press *9 to raise your hand. Videos can be turned on when speaking if desired. It is not required. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And if you're connecting by phone, you may need to press *6 to mute or unmute. Public comment is taken during the comment period early in the meeting. You can sign up by chatting with me or raising your hand during that portion of the meeting. It's also available just prior to any formal board vote after a motion has been made and seconded by board members. Back to you, Robin.
All right, so today's agenda is mainly going over the BES rate study results with a presentation and discussion, followed by a few internal items with the time remaining. So with that, are there any disclosures of communication?
Yeah, this is Bob. I've had multiple communications over the last couple of days with council staff regarding the stuff that came out yesterday in Willamette Week, where they're now proposing a different structure than the one that we were commenting on last week. 3 council members have come out with a different structure. So I've been lobbying on that, and I think we probably should reserve a few minutes to talk about what's going on there today. I hope we can, at least.
Thank you, Bob. I'm not seeing any other disclosures, so let's go ahead. Amy, has anyone submitted public comment before
Not
the
received
meeting?
anything in advance, and so far haven't been chatted. So if you're in the room and you want to make comment, please go ahead and unmute yourself. Not seeing anybody stepping up. So, and because we do not have a full quorum of the board, we actually will not be reviewing and approving minutes. We'll hold that over for one more meeting. And I will get the minutes for the other 2 meetings that have taken place in September out to you. And so we'll have review and approval of all of those minutes at the next meeting.
All right, wonderful. We'll do that for the second meeting of the month. And so on to our first topic, which is the BES rate study results. And so staff have circulated a memo from the BES director with rate study implementation recommendations. So please welcome BES staff and consultants to help provide an overview of those recommendations and the next steps. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Just to be clear, and I apologize that I was not clear about this, where it's just going to be BES staff today, we feel we can answer these questions, and I will share my screen so we can all see a PowerPoint. The goal today would be for us to spend a little bit of time talking about the results of the rate study. And then at the end, we will request a letter of support from PUB, or at least a letter outlining what your thoughts are about these rate study changes and recommendations. We'll go into detail about each of the different items. Sorry, I'm setting up my screen so I can see everything and everybody. Okay, now, before we get into the rate study, we want to remind and bring an overview of what we use utility rates for. Our mission guides what we do, and it is environmental services manages Portland's wastewater and stormwater infrastructure to protect public health and the environment. How do we achieve that mission? We meet that mission by providing two core services. First, we collect and treat sanitary sewage. Second, we manage our stormwater. In order to provide these services, BES owns and maintains a large amount of infrastructure, including more than 2,000 miles of pipes, tunnels, and force mains, 2 wastewater treatment plants, 100 pump stations, more than 10,000 green streets, sumps, and ditches, and hundreds of miles of streams and rivers and thousands of acres of habitat. Our staff also conduct a broad range of activities to support and provide these sanitary and stormwater services. We plan, design, and construct new infrastructure, operate and maintain our existing infrastructure, rehabilitate aging infrastructure, protect and restore our habitat, and regulate our ratepayers and system users. Some of you may not have been on at the time, but this is the 4th time we are coming to PUB. In June of 2021, we shared the phase 1 and 2 outputs for the rate study. Those are called the benchmarking memo and environmental scan. We shared those things back in June of 2021. Then in April 2022, we just shared that the preliminary report was available. So we didn't dig in particular detail in that one because there are a lot of options in the preliminary report. And then in April of 2023, so just about 6 months ago, we came with a presentation of our recommendations for the rate study, which is similar to what we had in public technical discussions. So some of what you're going to see is similar to what you've seen before in that April 2023 meeting. But we just wanted to be able to say, you know, that we've come a couple times. And so we're not going to talk about the whole scale of the project, like the benchmarking or the environmental scan, but we can answer questions and kind of discuss it after the presentation as needed. So before we discuss the rate study and its results, it's important to share what we are going to do next. So what we're going to do next is on the 18th, we are going to be going to council. This vote is to change city code to enable implementing the rate structure. So the code has been streamlined and adjusted to allow us to implement things like charging for stormwater based on 2 billable components, which we'll talk about, and adjusting how we charge SDCs. The rules behind this code is being drafted and will be complete in approximately early 2024. Additional, far more minor code changes will also come to council at a later date to further implement recommendations, particularly around the line and branch and non-conforming sewer charges. I'll talk about that later too. To be clear, what we would have council vote on would be effective July 1 of 2024, and it would only be on the structure of the rates and SDCs, not the actual rates themselves. As you all know, you are involved in the rate setting process, and in May is when council votes on that process. The first question we need to ask is, what is a rate study? A rate study is a broad term that covers financial evaluation processes where a utility, environmental services, reviews its rate structure to make sure that the cost for ratepayers is proportional to their impact and use of the system. That theme we're going to come back to several times. But a couple things I want to point out about that is that this rate study in particular is revenue neutral in that it will not increase revenue overall. That means that if we're collecting $100 today under the current rate structure, we will collect $100 tomorrow under the recommended rate structure. Additionally, a rate study isn't just an industry standard for utilities, it's a useful policy tool. It's been 15 years since BES conducted its last consultant-led rate study, and changes since 2005 include things like the Big Pipe, STEP, and major stormwater investments. Our rate should reflect that investment. This rate study is an opportunity to align with the overall goals of the Bureau. And, we see the top goals listed here. The most important theme is to ensure that costs are recovered in proportion to demands placed on the system. And that really is that rebalancing rates. The guiding theme there is that. Rate studies are common activities for utilities. They're considered a best practice. And environmental services hired an independent consultant to conduct a technical analysis and deliver these recommendations. Now that we've talked about what it is and what it did, we can talk about the findings. And I just want to talk about this for a little bit. We talked about this in April 2023, but this is some of the background we won't share with council because we've already is background. But, our findings are identified in 4 major points. Current rates are among the highest current rates are among the highest that the consultant surveyed, but rates of increase for other jurisdictions are higher than ours. And this is really because we've made major investments earlier than other cities, like the Big Pipe. Additionally, our staff made a very important note on this, which is, we cover a lot of environmental related activities in the city of Portland through utility rates that most other jurisdictions cover either through general fund or special taxes. So the second point is that our processes for collecting revenue mostly meet or exceed industry standards. For example, our extra strength program impressed the consultant. There are areas for improvement, and we'll discuss that in key changes. Our spending and investment since we last conducted a rate study has changed pretty dramatically. As I said, it was 18 years ago, and all of the investments we've made in our stormwater system, our treatment plant, and the Big Pipe need to be reflected in our rates. Additionally, some changes to our current methodology are warranted to achieve goals around fairness and affordability. So now that we've shared what a rate study is, why it matters, and a little bit about what the consultant found, here are the key changes from the rate study. First, and this is the key theme, we are going to recover costs in proportion to the demands that various customer classes place on the system. So that means we are going to recover more revenue from stormwater rates and less from sanitary rates. As I noted, in the last 18 years, we've invested in our stormwater system, and our rate should reflect that. Next, we're going to tier charges for single-family residential properties rather than charging a flat rate per home. Currently, all homes are charged a class average, and we will have 4 tiers for customers. In addition to the stormwater rate changes for everyone, we also adjusted rates for special customers, with a focus on customers within the current drainage districts, as well as overwater structures like docks and floating homes, to make sure that they are paying rates in proportion to their impact on the system. Let's go to the next slide. We're also recommending to change how we charge for stormwater. As you may know, moving away from the on-site, off-site conception that you see on your bill, and then also adding another billing component to your bill. We are simplifying and expanding the eligibility of Clean River Awards, the stormwater discount program. We're adjusting how SDCs are assessed to developments, so making sure that we can incentivize smaller housing and multi-dwelling units. We are removing the line and branch.
You're back, Anthony.
Okay. I was like, oh man, am I getting that other 15-second pause again? Sorry. Next up, we are removing the line and branch and non-conforming sewer charges. And then finally, we recommend to phase in these rate changes over 3 years. A couple things that I won't share to council, but I think are important for you all, particularly the first point, is we are changing the basis of the stormwater bill from impervious area to stormwater billable area. So this is how we currently charge our stormwater bill. And really, it's just changing the definition to match the intent of what we've always meant to do. One thing to note here is that we did receive feedback from a couple one pub member in particular, but from pub in general, about compacted gravel and charging compacted gravel In the intervening time between when we talked and now, I think we said it the last time we presented as well, we've determined that at the moment, charging compacted gravel is not administratively feasible. We recognize that this is a need and something we'd like to be able to do. However, we're just not quite able to do it with the current technology and administrative staff we have available. A couple other minor cost allocation adjustments that fly generally under the radar, but again, I think are important for Pub to know, is we are changing the Portland Harbor Superfund allocation between sanitary and stormwater. Previously, that allocation was 40% to sanitary, 60% to stormwater. Now it will be 12% to sanitary and 88% to stormwater. And really the reason there is just to reflect the fact of how sewage flow, what the driver behind our big pipe and a lot of the construction related to cleaning up the Willamette River has been, which is, stormwater management. Additionally, we are going to recover our financial assistance costs from all customers. Previously, BES had just recovered those costs from residential customers. And we are adjusting the domestic strength flow assumptions. Again, a tiny thing. It's going to impact how rates are calculated, but customers won't see a difference here. Next up, one of the key changes I talked about was tiering single-family residential stormwater charges. Currently, BES assumes, sorry, let me get to where I need to be. I apologize. Currently, BES assumes a class average for all single-family residential homes. This is relatively common for utilities because charging each single property is administratively too difficult, and the number was based on average impervious area from a survey we've done. We recommend to tier single-family residential customers to balance that fairness, charging everyone exactly their impact, with administrative feasibility of, not having the staff resources to measure that impact. There will be 4 tiers, as you can see on the slide. We have used data to sort customers into these tiers. Customers in the low tier and the medium tier will pay less than they do today. And this means about 80% of our single-family customers will see a decrease in their bill with these recommendations. Folks in tier 3, large, or tier 4, the really large, are the customers who are going to see an increase to their bill. And the 4th tier is really for the largest properties that should be charged based on actual impervious area. We anticipate this tier to cover a relatively small portion of customers. And you may notice that we don't have a maximum on tier 3 yet, and that's because we're still determining what would fall into that 4th tier. Let me just make a point there. The next section is about special customer class rates. There are 2 categories of these rates: sanitary rates based on what customers do or don't put into the sanitary system, and stormwater rates for ratepayers based on where they are. These are on the stormwater side. First, we'll talk about special rates for sanitary. These rates are related to extra strength and special meter charges. They will be reduced to match the cost of providing service to those customers. This means that ratepayers like breweries, restaurants, or those with deduct meters for irrigation will see a decrease in their bill. The next special set of customers we will talk about are stormwater-based. First up is drainage districts. Currently, drainage district customers receive a rate that's based on the off-site portion of our stormwater charges. This rate level was set via policy discussions several years ago. And again, you'll see the theme. We recommend to change this and charge rates based on the cost of providing service to those customers. This means that instead of stormwater rates that are 65% of customers in the rest of the city, the rate will be approximately 96.6% of what customers see in the rest of the city. One addition here is that drainage district customers are not currently eligible for Clean River Awards, and they will be under the proposed recommendations. The final set of special customers are overwater customers. Currently, these structures are not charged a stormwater rate due to a council decision to pause charging overwater structures several years ago. That decision also directed BES to conduct this study. Similar to other special customer rates, we recommend to set rates based on the cost of providing services. This means that overwater structures like docks and floating homes will be charged a stormwater rate that is approximately 88% of what impervious area on land is charged. Get another note here. The next recommendation is to modify our stormwater charges. As you may know, stormwater costs are based on impervious area or the area of a property off which most water runs. Instead of an on-site and an off-site charge, which are both charged on that impervious area, we're moving to think of the stormwater charge as a whole. One note is that, well, I'll get there, sorry. First, we are going to slightly change, as I noted, the definition of impervious area to stormwater billable area to match the intent of what we've historically been charging. For most customers, this does not change their billable area. Second, we are adding another billing component to the stormwater rate, equivalent service units, or ESUs. An ESU is a rate based on the number of people per dwelling and really accounts for the population impacts on our system, not just impacts related to the built form. So not just related to development, but related to the impacts of people. The ESU will cover costs associated with population impacts such as our regulatory requirements, natural areas, street sweeping, items like that. Finally, or next up, we'll discuss Clean River Awards. So I think you all know, but just to make clear for those unfamiliar, this program is a stormwater discount program for ratepayers, particularly residential and commercial, who safely manage some or all of their stormwater on site. Customers must register to receive this discount, and you can find the discount application online. There are various changes here, but at a high level, the thing we're saying is, the discount is going to stay the same. It will be 35%. We are going to have a simplified application process, and the discount is going to align with our development requirements in the Stormwater Management Manual. So if someone meets the Stormwater Management Manual, they would be eligible for Clean River Awards. The outcome of these recommendations will be to increase the number of ratepayers receiving a full credit and make it easier for folks to apply. Next up are SDC and fee changes. So first off, we'll just talk about the SDC adjustments. We updated how costs are charged to development. And what that means on the stormwater side is simplifying the SDC. On the sanitary side, we're updating how it's charged to better match, you'll see this theme, match the impacts of a customer on the system. We are also going to remove the class average charge we have for dwellings. So instead of charging a tiny home and a large home the same rate, we would now charge a system development charge that is lower for the tiny home and larger for the large home. Additionally, we are proposing to retire several connection charges, in particular line and branch and non-conforming sewer charges. So in case you all don't know, line and branch and non-conforming sewer charges are really a charge to pay to access the system. So whereas a system development charge is a charge based on buying into the capacity of the system, these charges are related to just being able, the pipe that's in front of someone's house, the cost to recoup that. In the 1990s, when these charges were really used a lot, there was a purpose. We needed to expand service in our city, particularly on the east side, and needed customers to be able to pay for that. Over time, over the last 30 years, we really feel that the line and branch and non-conforming sewer charge has served their purpose. And it's time to retire them because really at this point, it's a small customer base and large costs for a few properties. Additionally, the administrative costs for the line and branch program was such that we just felt it didn't make sense to continue. A critical component of any policy change is engagement. As part of the rate study, BES conducted numerous community engagement opportunities to both gather feedback on the proposed changes and educate users about their sewer and stormwater bill. We conducted multiple types of engagement, ranging from deep technical conversations, of which Pub had one with us, to high-level explanations of the changes to specific customers. All told, we've conducted over 30 events and reached over 170 ratepayers. We made specific outreach to underrepresented constituencies and conducted a listening session in Spanish. Additionally, we provided numerous community presentations. Another component of our outreach was on highly impacted customers, largely those in those special customer classes we mentioned in the drainage district and overwater structures. Overall, we heard general support of these changes, particularly for tiering single-family rates. Some of the feedback was ambivalent. I want to be clear, some of the feedback was ambivalent because this is a complex project with many changes. So particularly on the commercial side, there are so many factors that go into knowing how your bill is going to be impacted. Most folks couldn't quite tell us immediately if they thought what they felt that what we did matched the goals of what we were doing, but they wouldn't necessarily say they wholeheartedly agreed or disagreed. One exception to this general support was from customers with overwater structures. While they represent a very small portion of our customer base, they do see larger increases due to these changes. We conducted extra engagement with these ratepayers. We also did incorporate changes to these recommendations based on feedback. One of the things we heard is we wanted folks to mitigate. One of the things we heard was folks wanted us to mitigate those rate shocks in the first couple of years so that there isn't a massive change 1 year over the next. So we proposed to phase in these rates over 3 years. Additionally, we received recommendations to expand eligibility for Clean River Rewards. In some cases, we have expanded that eligibility, and in others, we're still reviewing, but we have taken those recommendations, which is nice. The next slide I want to share is related to deferred recommendations. So while there are certain things that, While there are certain things we wanted to make sure were included before that July 1, 2024 implementation deadline, due to administrative capacity, we had to defer certain recommendations, particularly some recommendations that the consultant provided related to expanding Clean River Rewards credits. While we still remain interested in providing an education or a natural resources credit, we just don't have the capacity at the moment to be able to implement those along with the amount of rate changes we're talking about. Additionally, we've had some public recommendations we are also looking into, like, as I noted before, charging compacted gravel, incorporating income into rate calculations. We heard that very strongly from certain folks. And then also figuring out how overwater structures could comply with the Stormwater Management Manual more easily. I know that this has been a lot of information and it's primarily focused on the what in terms of what's happening. This slide explains how the changes impact customers. So overall, costs are shifting from wastewater to stormwater, meaning that commercial customers will pay more and residential customers, particularly in the multifamily, will pay less. Additionally, by adding an ESU component to the stormwater charge, we shift costs from, We shift costs from single family and commercial customers to multifamily customers. It's important to note that individual properties will see changes based on a combination of so many different factors, but this list is generally who's going to see higher and lower bills for reference. Another component we have here is who's going to see higher and lower development bills, because as we noted, we're changing system development charges. And it's important to note that as well. Generally, developments that will see lower SDCs are smaller homes and most multi-dwelling units, whereas developments that will see higher SDCs are larger homes, very large commercial or industrial developments, and developments with a lot of extra strength sanitary flow. So think your restaurants or breweries. In conclusion, here's a couple high points to take away from the rate study. Overall, what we are doing is rebalancing our revenues to align with the cost of providing service to these customers. So that's a theme. I've tried to say it a lot of times because that really is one of the guiding themes here. On rates, we're going to charge customers based on the impact to the system to increase fairness across the city. And that increases charges for stormwater, decreases to sanitary. And that's to acknowledge the increased stormwater services. We decrease costs for most residential customers. As I noted, about 80% of single family customers will see a decrease in their bill. And while it's harder to estimate how many multifamily customers will see an increase or decrease, what we can generally say on the multifamily side is customers with very dense developments, think your apartments in the Pearl, will pay more. And customers with a less dense development footprint, think your kind of 2-3 story walk-ups with a parking lot, will likely pay less. And we also simplified and increased access to Clean River Rewards. On the SDC and fee side, we're simplifying SDC calculations and reducing charges for smaller residential developments. Additionally, by removing the line and branch and non-conforming sewer charges, we remove what is often for folks a surprise development charge. So that's another component. And finally, for implementation, we are proposing to phase this in over a 3-year period to mitigate rate shocks. I have one more slide to share with you all. So the specific output that we're asking here for PUB is we recognize that this is a broad sweeping adjustment in how we charge our rates, system development charges, and fees. The end result is to increase fairness across our city. And we think this is important for the council to hear PUB's perspective on this. As I noted, we are going to PUB on the 18th. We would love to have a letter of support for these rate study recommendations. We would ask if a representative could come to council to speak, but also I want to be clear that any thoughts are encouraged. So while we'd love a letter of support, if what you have is less than a letter of support or saying, hey, we really like these pieces, but we still have concerns about affordability, all thoughts are welcome. We're not trying to railroad you, but we would like a letter of support. And with that, I have a couple extra slides on example customer impacts, but generally I've kind of saved those. So I will defer to Rob, the chair.
Well, thank you, Anthony, for that. I guess we could probably start our discussion portion, unless the members of the pub really do want a little bit more of that background that it sounds like Anthony has in his back pocket.
Hey, Robin, this is Amy, and one of the board members who was not able to be present today, but plans to watch the video, Alexis, did share some questions with me in advance. And of course, I want to defer to the folks who are in the room, but one of her questions did specifically speak to what the anticipated impacts are on customers, particularly anything that may be demographic and who would be experiencing that shift. I think the most recent 2 slides shared a little bit about size of home, but I think that at least she would be interested in the details that you may have in the additional slides.
Great. Okay. I'll go through those. You can see here, the next section of this is example customer impacts. So the first is single family residential impact. So what we're going to see here. And like we said, we're going to have 4 tiers: low, medium, and high. Low is tier 1, medium is tier 2, high is tier 3. Tiers 1 and 2, the low and medium, are going to see a decrease in their bill. As you can see, tier 1 single family customers, which is about 20% of the single family customers in our city, are going to pay about 18% less. Tier 2, which is about 60% of the customers we have, are going to pay just a little bit less, about 1% less than they do today. And then tier 3 or larger houses are going to pay about 16% more than they do today. So this tier 3 single family customers is about 20% of our population. In regards to demographics, we did a rough analysis of these tiers spread across the city. And what we were looking for there is there a disproportionate share of tier 3 large homes in a more vulnerable community? And what we found is, by and large, the spread between tiers 1, 2, and 3 is fairly consistent across the city. In lower income areas, we did see that there were more tier 3 single family homes, and there were more tier 1. So on balance, the result is it impacts the city pretty much the same uniformly, which was part of our demographic kind of test. But I do want to just recognize part of that also means that there are more tier 1s and more tier 3s, so more of the high and the low. And here are just a couple kind of development forms you can see as a reflection of what would fall into tier 1, 2, and 3. The next thing I have is multifamily residential, 3 impacts, all 50 units. And it really just shows that I know this is very jargony, but really a multifamily customer, whether or not that bill will increase or decrease, is dependent on the ratio of stormwater billable area and density. So as you can see in the far left here, for a high density customer, think, in the Pearl, a big apartment complex, might pay about 1% more than they pay today, might pay a bit more. Medium density is going to pay just a little bit less than they do today. And then a low density, like I said, with surface parking, might pay about 4% less than they do today. So overall, what this is very likely going to do, and again, every multifamily property is different. It's really hard to be able to say that one general experience is going to happen. But overall, the impact on multifamily customers is going to be that denser, larger apartments will see an increase to their bill, and less dense will either see similar or slightly lower bills. On the commercial side, this really is to show that balance. As I showed you, we're intending to collect more from stormwater revenue and less from sanitary revenue. And so if you're a commercial customer with high sanitary usage, like this medical center over there, they're going to pay less than they do today. And even though it's 1%, it's still a sizable amount of money. And that's because they use a lot of they use a lot of water, which converts to sanitary sewer flow. And we are going to reduce the rate on the sanitary side. On the other side, an office campus, which maybe has an office, so moderate amounts of sanitary sewer flow, but very large amounts of billable area because they have a large parking lot, they'll pay more than they do today because we are going to charge more for stormwater than we do currently. The last one is industrial, so an industrial person. So this example is a brewery, but it really applies to anybody with high strength usage. So you can also think of restaurants will generally see a decrease in their bill as well, because often those industrial users are using a lot of high sanitary sewer flow, and they get an extra strength charge. So that's kind of two reductions there, and that's where you can see this example customer pays about 9% less than they do today. The next slide is a lot less clean because our graphics person has, it's not on her, it's me. Our graphics person has yet to update this, but I can point to a couple different examples for system development charges. This current EDU for a single family home. So this would be a customer that has 16 drainage fixture units, so like a kitchen, a dishwasher, a full bath, and a washing machine. That customer would pay about 24% less than they do today on their system development charges. For mixed use, so a 3-story apartment building with 12 units, they'll see about a 20-ish% reduction. And as you can see here, it kind of depends on the development form of what you're seeing of the middle housing to multifamily housing. On the other side, as we noted as well, we're charging more on the stormwater side based on impervious area. So that your large industrial park with 2 buildings, so a lot of parking lot, a lot of building, that's where this customer would see a large increase in their system development charge. So I hope all that was helpful. I'll flash back over to the specific letter of support and hope that that is what I had for example customers. Regarding demographics, because rates are a relatively blunt instrument and they affect everybody regardless of income, it's hard to do a more granular analysis than what I said related to kind of a community vulnerability index and looking at the different tiers of single family customers.
I see Bob has their hand up. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, Anthony. I suspect you're going to get some blowback from overwater users. You've already alluded to that a little bit. But can you go into a little more detail? I know you did the last time you spoke to us as well, but I'd appreciate hearing it again about how you came to those conclusions. 88%, I believe, is what you said of land-based structures.
Yeah, one moment. Let me pull up a different PowerPoint that is ever so slightly different, but not that different. I apologize. Let me stop sharing for a second.
Hey, Anthony, Bob, I don't know if we hit it well enough, but the change from the last time we built overwater structures, 2018, prior to 2018, we built floating homes and industrial docks. And this new proposal is to build boat houses and slatted docks as well. So there is an expansion of what we're calling stormwater billable area and a change to the definition. So we used to say impervious area. Now we're saying stormwater billable area so that we can incorporate overwater structures into that. So it is a slightly larger amount of stuff that we're counting for billable purposes.
Yeah, so these are a couple slides we had mocked up as kind of issue specific slides. And one of them, like you noted, is overwater structures. While they are a very small portion of customers, they're 0.2% of our customer base. They are among those that are more impacted by the rate study changes because, as noted before, as you can see here, they were not charged for their overwater structures between 2018 and 2023. So prior to 2018, these customers had been charged, but they are not currently. So the question there is why charge these overwater structures? We've gotten a lot of questions from them about that. And first is it advances our policy goals related to aligning rates with impacts on the system. And just to be clear, part of how we did that was that special customer class rate being 88% of what overland customers would pay is how we align those rates with impact on the system. One thing that's important to note here is overwater structures, just like every customer in the city, benefits from our stormwater system as a whole. The investments we put into natural areas, into our big pipe, into debt service, into making sure we have clean rivers is something that benefits all of the city, and therefore all of the city should pay. Additionally, their runoff does have an impact on the rivers. We have scientific literature that proves that there is that water quality impact. So what we are saying there is that it technically makes sense that we charge overwater structures. And additionally, in 2018, when council put a pause, they directed us to charge overwater structures. we had extensive outreach with these structures. Here's the slide to share with you, Bob, of what we do. So what we did for special customers here, as well as other special customer class rates, is we asked the question, what services do we provide to all customers that we do not provide to these specific customers? And you can see here's a functional cost allocation of taking our stormwater costs and functionalizing them by services that we provide. So, we spend a lot of money on water quality treatment, on ditches and culverts, on just business and technical stuff, like my salary. This part of my salary is paid for by the stormwater charge. What we did identify is that the local collection and conveyance system, that little piece of the pie that's taken out, that piece is something that overwater structures don't directly benefit from. So even though they do benefit from water quality investments we have, as well as all the other system-wide conveyance, because if we don't have system-wide conveyance, we have more flooding has more water quality issues in the river and whatnot. But that local conveyance in front of someone's house that's going into the bigger pipe, that really doesn't benefit overwater structures. So that is how we came to the conclusion to calculate that rate for overwater structures. One thing we do want to be clear about is that most floating home communities will continue to pay less than the typical bill for a single family home. A typical single family bill is going down, as we noted, a little bit. We use tier 2 for this of 7837. We've examined about 426 units. It varies. There are multiple morages with multiple units per morage, but we see the average of all of the customers we've measured thus far is about 7431 per unit. And it varies by morage, but what we can say here is that we are confident about that. So this hopefully can answer your question, Bob. And then I hopefully gave a little bit more context on overwater structure folks, their disagreement with this. They were very vocal. We had a lot of outreach opportunities with them and have talked to them quite extensively.
Thanks. That's super helpful. And I agree with your approach here, for the record.
Thank you for that. Stop sharing for a second, pull up my other slides. Okay. Over here in case anyone wants to look at anything in particular. Apologies. There we go.
While I'm waiting for more folks in the room to generate any questions, I thought I'd share just a couple more thoughts that came from Alexis, one of the voting pub members. First of all, she wanted to express on her behalf appreciation for the clear memo with the recommendations and the discussion of the impacts. She found value in that and really appreciated the way it was presented. She said that she was eager to hear some of the pros and cons of implementing these recommendations and is hoping that you'll elaborate on that a bit more. I think you did in the presentation. If there's anything else that you think might add value and answer her questions as far as pros and cons, certainly add that. You already answered the question about customer impacts. So the only other one that she raised, and I'm not sure, you did have some slides on this and covered it a little bit, but she had asked specifically about how will the SBAs and the DFUs be calculated? So if there's anything additional that you think might add some clarification, that would be helpful. Yeah.
Awesome. I can, the pros and cons of the recommended rate structure, that's kind of tough. What I can say is, often it's not necessarily pros and cons as much as it is balancing competing priorities. For example, one of our goals is to recover costs in proportion to the demand that every customer places on the impact that they place on the system. In an ideal world, that would mean that we charge every single family customer based on their actual stormwater billable area. However, administrative feasibility is another goal that we have, because if we end up charging people more equitably, but charging them 20% more to be that equitable, is that really worthwhile? So what I would say there is it's not as much a pro and con of this, but rather balancing the competing priorities we have of making sure that we're considering all Portlanders, including affordability as a consideration as much as we can with the blunt instrument of rates, as well as, administrative feasibility and cost of service equity. So not racial equity, to be clear, but cost of service equity, which is making sure that the costs are aligned with impacts on the system. The other question you had is how will stormwater billable area and SBA and drainage fixture units, or DFUs, be calculated? For drainage fixture units, or DFUs, that's used during the system development. So that's during the development process, and that's going to be related to the system development charge. The state provides a calculators of each different, thing that impacts the sanitary system and what that DFU value is. So I have it. Let me see if I can pull up my notes for that specific SDC slide, because I do have some things. Oh, that's right, for the impacts on development. So for example, if I'm not mistaken, a dishwasher is like 3 or 4 drainage fixture units. That there's a table that the state identifies for each of those items. The other one is stormwater billable area. So how do we calculate stormwater billable area? And the answer is for customers where we measure actual billable area, we look at geographic information systems. So we look at a GIS map, a picture during wintertime when most of the trees don't have leaves, and we draw boundaries over things that are billable area. One of the places that's relatively easy for us to do is over water structures, because there are very few trees that block over water structures. We also do that same measurement for commercial properties and multifamily properties, 5 units and up. Between 1 and 4 dwelling units, we use a class average to calculate how much stormwater billable area a given account has. I hope that helps.
Hey, this is Robin, the chair. I'd like to ask a question as a voting member. And I'm very much a fan of the tiered system. And I wanted to ask and just dig a little deeper about tier 3 and tier 4, and perhaps like has it been easier to identify tier 1 and tier 2 with square footage, or like what are the hangups from putting a specific endpoint on tier 3 right now? Or is there a breakdown of largeness of house within tier 3 as a way to better understand who to push into tier 4?
Thank you for that. That's a really great question. And the answer, unfortunately, is really administrative capacity at the moment. So part of the reason why we're going to council on the 18th is because it's going to take us a lot of months to really fully implement this in our system. And part of that is looking through all the data, making sure that we're going to charge folks correctly. The difference between tiers 3 and 4 of why we haven't identified that upper maximum is more to do with that administrative limitation, rather than kind of a flaw in the data, or there's a difference between those tiers, the tiers 3 and 4 and tiers 1 and 2. Our goal right now is to make sure that we have everyone in the right place, and then customers that will be moved into tier 4. For example, we were looking through the data and we found one house, a very large house, someone who lives, on the west side of the city up in the hills. Their roofing, their house area, the area of their rooftop was basically 1 acre. So they had a massive house. Those are the types of customers we're going to try and find and put into tier 4. However, we need the administrative capacity to do so. So we're working on it. I'm just a rough guess. I would guess we're going to have that limitation at somewhere around 5,000, 6,000 square feet of billable area, but it will depend on, a multitude of factors. And, what we see is a general, bell curve distribution, but with a really long tail for those very large houses. And so now it's just a matter of figuring out where do we cut that tail off and put them into tier 4.
Thank you for that. Any pub members have any extra questions, anything they'd like to just see rounded off with an extra factoid?
The only thing I would say is we really appreciate your time. We appreciate coming to you multiple times to be able to share this. We appreciated your input every time we've come. We'd love to have a letter showing how you feel about this to council, letter of support ideally. We really appreciate the time. And Aaron, my colleague Aaron, and I have done a lot of this public outreach. So we are available if you have any kind of in-depth technical questions, anything from high to low. We're always happy to help answer those questions.
And in regards to that, Anthony, if we ended up putting our time towards a letter of support, would we be the right people to offer a suggestion of where tier 3 should end and where tier 4 should begin, or would that be perhaps above us a little bit and just a generalized support of going forward?
So on that, what I would say is that's an interesting component where I can't speak to the dynamics of pub and whatnot. I've only attended, I'm not the most familiar with pub dynamics. What I would say is generally defining those tiers between tier 3 and 4 is more of an administrative exercise for us rather than a pub recommendation. That said, any input you have would be welcome. We appreciate that.
All right. So with that, if there's any other, Amy, do you have anything to add before we wrap up the conversation on the rate study?
I did just want to mention, because I mentioned when we were starting the meeting that we did not have quorum. We do have one voting member, Chris Richards, who was not able to attend, but may be able to connect briefly if there's a decision that is desired by the other members in the meeting in order to reach quorum. He has the background information about the proposal and is supportive of pub providing a letter of support if the rest of the members were interested in that. So if you let me know, I can reach out to him and he may be able to connect, but I just wanted to put that on the table so that it would allow you to reach quorum. As far as logistics, if you did want to pen a letter of support, it's certainly something that if you had concepts that you wanted to make sure were captured, I, as your support staff, could help craft something, or you could delegate it to any pub volunteers as well to work with me. The meeting is taking place before your next board meeting. Your next board meeting is on the 19th, so it would need to, any decision would need to take place today, but we would be able to pen it as long as it lined up with what your decisions were in the meeting.
We apologize for that delay. We know there's a lot on y'all's calendar and there's so many changes happening in the city. We appreciate the time.
Well, I guess I'll just say I hope we do write a letter if we feel supportive.
I second that, if that's a motion. Or do we need a motion? Do we need a motion to bring somebody into the meeting so we can have a motion to vote? Like, whatever the process is, I think we should move forward with that recommendation.
Go ahead, Heather, and then maybe we'll make a motion.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that I am in favor of writing a letter of support.
And I am reaching out to Chris right now to try to see if he can connect. So if you just give me a minute, hopefully we will have him soon.
Anthony, I think we're aiming for a time certain of 2 o'clock in the afternoon on October 18th for the council presentation.
That is correct.
Anyone wants to attend or log in and watch it or come and testify. We do expect that there will be some folks there making their voices heard.
Yes, we do.
For the record, Chris has joined the room, so you now have quorum.
All right. So with that, I guess I make a motion in support of writing a letter of support for the recommendations of the BES rate study. Yes. Does
I'll
anyone
second.
second that?
I'll second.
And so I believe discussion is next, followed by public comment. Anyone have anything to discuss? Not seeing any hand raises. Amy, is there any public comment on this vote?
I have not received any messages, so speak up if you have comment. The member of the public says no comment.
All right, so with that, I think it goes to a vote, if I'm correct on process.
Yes.
So as a voting member, Robin Castro, I vote yes.
Voting member Heather, I also vote yes.
Voting member Lorraine Wilson, yes.
Voting member Bob Solinger, yes.
Voting member Julie DeGraw. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I do this in the wrong order? I think I'm right. Okay. I vote yes. Apologies.
Voting member Chris Richard, I vote yes.
All right. If I can count right, I believe the yeses have it. So we will be writing a letter of support. So of course, Amy, is now the time to ask for volunteers or just to threaten people to be aware that they will have to volunteer?
So the question for those who are in the room is either provide some specifics that you want to make sure are highlighted, or volunteer to make sure that it lines up. Otherwise, I will craft a general letter that summarizes, you know, the points at which you've engaged in the process and support for the final recommendations.
All right, go ahead, Bob. What's your comment?
I think a general letter is probably fine for the most part. I think it would be helpful to have something in there about the approach that they're taking on the rates, about distributing out the costs, that we all benefit from the system. I think that's an important point that I think will be contested. So I think if we feel comfortable saying that we do want to distribute those costs, that we distribute the benefits, we should also be distributing the costs. I think that would be useful to call out.
I agree.
Any other specific shout outs that we want to do in that letter before we wrap it up? All right, so it does sound like there's general support. So we're gonna start the process, allow Amy to do the rough draft, and if anyone is available, please reach out to Amy, and that way we can assist her. And then with that, I actually think this would be there we go. Okay, sorry, I was lost for a second. I was like, where are we? We do have some internal board discussions to do, so let's let Bob say what he'd like to say, and then we will start that.
Well, I think the other request was that we testify. Does somebody want to carry this? I would offer, but I'm going to testify on behalf of Riverkeeper. Some other things I want to say. So, do we want to send somebody or delegate somebody to talk to council?
The other thing that you could do if you're not sure who the person is, because we have some people absent today, is you could take a vote to support a delegate if any volunteers are able to make the time once I share it with everybody on the board, because there may be somebody from some of those missing who may be interested as well.
Julia, do you have a question?
Yeah, I think that's, I agree with Bob, that would be good for us to get ask someone to volunteer to testify. I would love to testify, but I will be on vacation in Mexico that week, which I'm not sad about that, but I'm sad to miss it. But I think it'd be good for us to extend the opportunity for someone from Pub to show up and testify that day, with the support of staff to help, draft that testimony, largely based on our letter, I would assume. I think it's important. And I would if I could. Do we need a motion to do that?
I think it wouldn't hurt to just make a motion to delegate. It doesn't look like there's any volunteers in the room, so it depends on whether somebody who wasn't here is available. But we could just at least get a straw poll or thumbs up of folks in the room that there's support for the idea. All right, I see thumbs up and one opposition. Do we still have quorum? Yes.
Hey, this is Robin. Yeah, apparently Zoom doesn't have a thumbs down, but my only hesitation on this is testifying could be powerful, but it feels like we have capacity to do our part with the letter, and it feels like we would just be reiterating something that we already sent them on paper. And so I just want to be mindful of, are we taking on extra tasks, or can we say what needs to be said in the letter without being present at the testimony? Because to my understanding, I assume council would have read this letter before that meeting, and thus we would just be reiterating what we had sent them via letter. Go ahead, Julia.
I feel like I'm reading between the lines a little bit here, but from what Bob said and from the undertone, I think, of the presentation we received, I think that they are anticipating some negative feedback in this meeting. And I know what it's like in public hearings when folks show up and speak in large numbers on one side. And I just want to make sure that a side in favor of doing what we think is the right thing, being vocal in this setting and representing the public interest, is important. I think if no one else was going to show up and testify, I would be less passionate about the idea. But I think it's important. It seems like it's going to be a big one, and we should, in addition to sending in the letter, have a testimony, have someone testify if we can line someone up.
Hey, Chris, you trying to jump in, or did you accidentally unmute?
Sorry, I'm losing signal. So I ran back to get signal. So we kept quorum.
We appreciate you.
I still saw a general majority, and the real testimony will be in the letter. So I will reach out to all board members and see if there's anybody who could make the time, and we'll just document what the discussion was in the meeting.
All right, I think that's a good solution to us moving forward. And then with that, would this be wonderful? Okay, so then we'll be moving on to the next couple topics of discussion, which is a little bit more free form, and that is, I know that Bob had mentioned a couple of counselors have their own idea on the city organizational structure. We might want to make a comment on that, as well as we have an expected field trip coming up, and we're always looking for recruitment. So With that, Amy, could I actually have your assistance on this one? Do you want me to just start top, go
Yeah,
down?
so I threw the one on that Bob mentioned just because it's time sensitive and the public comment period is still open. So it was originally set to close on the 29th, but now they have extended it through the 5th. So if Pub wanted to make additional comment or share additional feedback, then this would be the meeting where you would want to make that decision. So I put that first so that we could try to do that while we still have quorum, and then the other stuff is primarily brainstorm that we can touch on if we have time, and if not, it will carry forward to the next meeting.
All right, so with that, Bob, do you have any background information about the handful of counselors that have their kind of own structural idea, or is there anything that we can kind of read, like a little background on it? Because I have not, just personally, I have not heard of that like secondary option.
Yeah, it hit Willamette Week and the Oregonian yesterday. And there are a number of concerns that Commissioners Rubio and Gonzalez and Ryan are bringing forward, some of which pertain to the structure and some of which don't. Basically, by their own staff's acknowledgement, there's kind of a battle going on at City Hall over how to advance this forward as a whole. And one of the things they've thrown in is that they want to remove parks and the new Natural Resources Bureau, if it's created, from the infrastructure section and create this new sort of public, I don't know what they're calling it, but it would be arts, parks, natural resources, and neighborhoods. I have my personal feelings about that, but those aside, I find it tremendously frustrating and disappointing that we're in the midst of a comment period. People are weighing in. This is a short timeline. We haven't had a lot of time to do it. It's nice they gave us an extension. But I find it very disappointing and frankly, just bad public process that 3 commissioners pop out like this. It's in Willie Week. No one's actually seen the letter. They've already signaled what they're bringing forward. And, it makes you wonder what the purpose of a public comment period is. From my perspective, the public should have an opportunity to comment on the proposal as presented and articulated in the narratives they provided. City council should get that information and make decisions on whether or not they want to adjust. But I think this throws the entire process into disarray. I know as a stakeholder, just speaking for Willamette Riverkeeper, we're going to submit a whole nother set of comments now responding to a different structure. So I guess my hope is that perhaps the pub can weigh in and think about saying something very briefly that the public ought to have a chance to comment on the structure as proposed. We hope the commissioners take it seriously. We respect their right to make changes. That's why they're commissioners. But don't do it in the middle of a public comment period like this. This is what undermines confidence in Portland city government.
All right, and so with that background, Bob, are you specifically wanting us as a board to kind of push back on the commissioners having kind of their own kind of just what you said essentially is that you can have an opinion on this, but it's not appreciated that it's being pushed through during when the focus of the project is currently on the public? Is that essentially what you would like us to lobby for?
Yeah, essentially, the public was provided with a proposal. The public comment period is ongoing. Please wait until you hear from the public as to their ideas and concerns on the proposal that's on the table before throwing out a different proposal that just confuses the process. Basically follow the process that you yourselves have set out. And I think that can be done in a paragraph, basically.
I'm seeing some thumbs of support from Chris and myself. So I do like that idea and keeping it short and sweet. And we are a collective body of the public. And so I think Julia pointed out with the last conversation is when there is pushback, it might be good. It is good to be on the front line, being that voice for our community members. So this could definitely be something. Would this be another motion, Amy?
Yes, because you would be submitting formal public feedback, I think it would be good for somebody to make a motion. I agree from what you summarized, Bob, that it's probably just a paragraph, and I think I can capture the wording based on what has been shared. So I'm not concerned about the crafting of it, although I could review it with a volunteer, perhaps you, Bob. But if somebody wants to make a motion so that you can have public comment and vote.
I'll make a motion that we send a brief statement in that we'd appreciate it if they would wait until public comment is collected and assimilated into this process before they start modifying the proposal on the table.
This is Chris Richard. I second.
All right, this is time for discussion. Any board members have opinions for or against the matter? I will raise my virtual hand as a voting member and say, I genuinely support the concept of what Bob has elucidated to us, but I do feel a bit premature having not specifically read the proposal or the news articles on it. So I do feel a tiny bit premature to make a comment on their proposal, but I do genuinely support the idea of let the process exist and make sure that we're always centering the public before we're pulling in our own ideas. Back with my chair hat on. Any other discussion before public comment? All right, so I'm not seeing any more hands raised. Amy, is there any people present for public comment that would like to say something?
I've not had any requests to comment, so unmute now if you're interested. Seeing anything, so I think you can go ahead with the vote.
All right, this is Robin, voting member, and I support the motion.
This is Heather, voting member, and I also support the motion.
Lorraine Wilson, voting member. I support the vote.
Oh, Salinger, voting member. I support going forward.
Julia DeGraw, voting member. I also support moving forward with this.
This is Chris Richard, voting member. I vote yes.
All right, looks like there is consensus to sending a brief statement regarding the the commissioners that are offering a secondary option for city reorg. So we will do that. And then I believe we just have about 10 to 15 minutes left. I think this will be a good time. Amy, if you would assist. And also just if there's any questions, any background information that we would really like to discuss so that we are prepared for our Tryon Creek Tour coming up.
Yeah, BES staff are coordinating, so we are set for October 25th for that tour, and I'll get you more details about where we're going to meet, if anybody wants to carpool, that kind of logistical stuff. But since they are doing the coordination, if there is anything that you want to make sure is raised and might help staff ensure that they're preparing something that answers your questions, that is the purpose of this time.
I'm not sure I personally have any specific questions. I think with Tryon Creek, it was mostly if people have been to previous field trips, I'm imagining we want to be mindful of what the weather's going to be like that day, so always dress accordingly. I personally would love to carpool with one of you. But outside of that, looks like Farshad has a comment. Go ahead.
Thanks, Robin. You took the words right out of my mouth. For the folks that were at the Columbia Boulevard tour last year, there is a real distinction between the two facilities. This will be exclusively an outdoor visit. So do dress accordingly. Do have shoes that you're comfortable walking in all weather. We are planning on having a large event tent with outdoor seating and tables, and that's where lunch will be served. But it will be outside. We'll have space heaters there if the weather requires it. So that's one point. And mentioning carpooling, there is no real parking on the Tryon Creek campus. So what we're going to be doing is arranging some shuttle rides from the park that's just south of Tryon Creek on the waterfront. There's a parking lot there where we'll first meet, and then we will take a van. It's about a 2-minute drive to the plant. So those are the just some brief details I wanted to share with you now. A more formal communication with those and other details will be coming soon.
Thank you for that. And then I just haven't checked my calendar. Do we have like a specific, can we just get a reminder of the specific time of day that the tour is happening?
We're scheduled from 10:30 to 12:30. We'll be meeting at the park at 10:30, and we'll take about half an hour to shuttle everybody to the campus, and then the tour of the campus will start at 11. Probably be breaking folks up into 2 groups, and then we'll come back for lunch, and any questions, Q&A discussion will be done after the tour. And again, the purpose of this tour is just to give folks a tangible experience about the condition of Tryon Creek, the location of where the new plant is going to be, all in the run-up for the new intergovernmental agreement that's being negotiated currently between Lake Oswego and City of Portland. We wanted to give you guys that hands-on experience ahead of that going to council.
Farshad, could you say the date again? I missed that.
It is October 25th. I think that's a Wednesday, from 10:30 to 12:30.
It's on my calendar. I just checked. Thanks.
You bet.
I know I'm excited because I missed the last field trip and I've been engaging everyone on Pub through my computer screen for the past 3 years. So I'm excited to see some of the staff in person as well as my fellow Pub members. And with that, I'm not seeing any hands raised. We really only have like 5 minutes left, Amy. I was going to say, I'm not sure if it's good to continue on or just move on to the announcements and expectations for our next meeting. So
Yeah.
go ahead, Amy, if you'd like.
Yeah, we'll save any other topics that require discussion for the future. So just a reminder that I sent out an email about administrative review committees. We do need a volunteer if anybody is available for October 10th. That is coming up pretty quickly here and need a slot. In absence of Pub members, they'll identify internal resources in order to cover that. And just go ahead and respond to my email or reach out to me by text or phone. And I think that's it. Everything else you've received emails about. So the only other topic is if there's any clear priorities that, in addition to some of the carryover from today, that you want to prioritize for the October 19th meeting. The October 19th, I just got a question about the time of the October 19th. It is during the regular meeting time, 11 to 12:30. So that hasn't changed from the third Thursday at their regular time. It's just the October 25th, which is at a special time since it's an additional meeting.
Yeah, this is Robin. I was going to say, I like the idea of talking about recruitment, and some carryover topics might be if we got the response that we wanted to out of City Council through our written response and testimony regarding the BES rate study. So that could also be a topic. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any hands or anyone jumping out to shout something. So with that, I think that comes to the end of our meeting today. We've got a meeting on October 19th at 11. We have the field trip on the 25th at 10:30. And then again, November's first meeting is on the 7th at 3:30. Email us, call us, click on our website to contact us. And yeah, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.